I wanted to focus here on some of the very basics of poker and hopefully introduce you guys to what it's about and some of the basic things that you should start thinking about when you're just getting into it. So I'm playing one table here. I've raised up in the cutoff position, and I'll get to the positions in a second. It's probably the terminology would be one of the first things that would help with poker. So starting out with, there's the small blind and the big blind. So these are forced bets before you even see your cards that you must make, and every hand it rotates around the table. So as each hand finishes, the button shifts one, the button being sort of like the dealer position, and then right to the left of the dealer, in this case it's Zoltaz, posts the small blind, which is usually half the big blind. Now we're playing with penny stakes here, so it's only 2 cents as opposed to 2.5 cents. But traditionally, at most tables, you'll find the small blind is half the size of the big blind. So in terms of terminology, I'm going to go ahead and bet my top pair here. You see I have top pair 8, so it stands to be probably the best hand at this point, so I want to get some value out of it. So in terms of terminology, we have the small blind and big blind. I'm going to go ahead and bet again here. And I'm playing this video just so you'll get a flavor of a little bit of play as well as some thoughts just on getting into the game. So anyway, at this point, I still think I probably have the best hand. Chances are this Luisino 58 character, chances are he was just calling my flop bet just to see a turn card and hope to hit something. I did have that pair of 8s. So I figured I had the best hand. I didn't want to give him a free river card if I checked and then he checked behind and then potentially hit like an ace or a king or whatever he might have been holding. So that's why I wanted to bet there, mainly to protect my hand, because I figured that I had the best hand. And I would probably get called by worse hands as well. It's one of the first things, and I'll definitely get to this, whether it be this video or one of the next ones in my beginner series, is when to. I think a lot of people, once they start playing for a little bit, they're like, well, when do I bet? When do I check? When do I fold? When do I raise? So I'm going to get into that, and sort of the first thing I want you to start thinking about is basically you'd want to bet when you think that either A, there's two reasons you would make a bet. A, you think a worse hand is going to call your bet, so you're getting value from that bet. So that was an example there where I had Jack 8 with my pair of 8s. I thought that a worse hand might call my bet, and it did on the flop. I figured either someone with just overcards, and I'll mention the overcards terminology a lot. Overcards meaning they don't have a pair, but they have 2 higher cards than the cards on the board. Right, so I think the flop was like 8-3-2 or something like that. I had Jack 8, so I figured Lewis could have had a hand like Jack 10 or King Queen. Those would be an example of 2 hands that where he'd have 2 overcards. So he might call my flop bet just in the hopes of hitting one of his overcards, that sort of thing. So the reason I made the bet is because I thought, well, he might call with overcards, or he might call with a worse made hand. And when we say made hand, that generally means at least a pair, a hand that he could potentially want to go to showdown with. Now showdown will happen after the river card, the betting's been completed on the river card. So there's the flop, we call it the flop right here, where there's the first 3 cards that come out. I'm just going to fold here, I don't have anything. It's called the flop. The next card to come is called the turn, and then there's another round of betting, and the 5th card to come is called the river card. And then another round of betting after the river card, and then at that point, if a bet has been made and called, or it's gone check, the hand goes to showdown. So the reason, coming back to why you would make a bet, either A, you think a worse hand will call your bet. Like I said, where I had that Jack 8, I thought a worse hand, either overcards, or maybe he had a smaller pocket pair than 8s. Maybe he had a hand like, I don't know, pocket 6s that might call. A pocket pair meaning he has 2 of the same card in his hand. So if he had pocket 6s, he'd have 2 6s in his hand. So in that case, I thought perhaps pocket 6s might call, and that's why I made the bet. And as well, The other reason you might decide to make a bet, just at a very high level, is if you think you can get a better hand to fold. Now, that's a lot more tricky, especially the micro stakes, where you'll find, if you're just getting into poker, people don't like to fold very much if they have any sort of hand whatsoever. So, but definitely as you get into poker, bluffing or getting a better hand to fold is definitely a pretty big component. So those would be your two reasons to why you might decide to place a bet. And it's really important, and like you'll even find people that are fairly experienced when if you ask them, like you look at how they played a hand and you're like, well, why did you make that bet there? And you ask them, well, did you think a better hand would call, or sorry, a better hand would fold, or did you think a worse hand would call in that spot? And sometimes the answer is no, no worse hand was calling and no better hand was folding. So then you come back to, well, why did you make the bet in the first place? And they're not even thinking at that level. So those are probably the two, like from a very high level, the first concept you want to start thinking about when deciding whether to bet or when to check. So it's sort of probably one of the first things I'd advise you to start thinking about. So anyway, and I'll probably get into that, expand on that as we go through some hands or get into it. I don't really want to play too many hands in this video because I more want to just start talking about some terminology and some really high level concepts for beginners, for people who've never really played too much and are looking to get into poker, whether it be online, whether it be live. Whether you're just playing a random like monthly or weekly game with your buddies live, or you want to start trying to make some money online, whatever it might be. So anyway, I want to first start talking about the terminology, some of the terminology, because I think that'll help a lot when you start getting into a lot of the videos on Outstanding Poker. So the positions at the table, there's the dealer button. Now, the dealer is an important spot because they always act last on every betting round, except pre-flop. Pre-flop being before any of the cards that have come out on the flop. So, like I said earlier, we have the small blind, which is directly to the left of the dealer, and then we have the big blind, which is to the left of the dealer. So in this case, I'm the dealer, Charles right here. I've already folded, but we have Pum Pum Punka, nice name by the way, and Luisino in the big blind. So now that hand has ended, and the dealer button shifts one to the left, and it will just continually see move like that throughout the session. So we have the small blind and the big blind. They're forced bets before you see your cards, and that's the reason that they exist is just to incite action at the table, because if now there's money in the middle, there's a reason for you to raise and get involved in the pot because you want to steal that money. But if you're not in either of the blind spots, you don't have to put any money in at all. So there you see I got 5-3 suited, and I'm directly to the left of the big blind, and that spot's known as under the gun. And you'll hear me or some of the other coaches on our site will refer to that on throughout various videos in talking about position at the table. And position at the table is very important. I'm going to go ahead and raise this guy up here to 50 cents. And actually this segues nicely into my discussion about position. The reason I'm raising him here is because I have a marginal hand. It's not a great hand, and I'll get into sort of hand values and which hands are good and which hands you should like always be folding pre-flop. But I have an ace with a weak kicker. Now the kicker is the card that complements the ace that will, and it might not seem important from the outset. But the kicker is pretty important because if you both end up having a pair of aces, then the kicker will determine who actually wins a hand. So I raised here his pre-flop bet, and I got check raised. And I'm actually, I think I'm just going to fold here. And the reason being is because my kicker is pretty terrible. Now when he check raises me, meaning that he checks, I bet, and then he raises because action goes back to him. He's representing a pretty strong hand. Now, by no means do I know for sure that fold is the correct play there. But I'm thinking about all the possible hands that he would do that with. Now, if he had just nothing, he'd probably just check fold, right? So but on the other hand, he may be bluffing. But basically, when he check raises, he's representing that he has a stronger hand than my pair of aces. Now, if I had a kicker of say I had ace king type hand, so I had top pair of aces, as well as a king kicker. I probably wouldn't have folded because then I wouldn't be as concerned that he has a better pair of aces. When we say better pair of aces, we're talking about being outkicked, where he has a better kicker than me. So if I had a pair of if I had a king kicker there, I probably wouldn't have folded to his check raise. Anyway, coming back to this hand here, I raised pre-flop with ace jack. It's a pretty decent hand, and I get a call from Luis in the small blind here, and now he's betting into me 5 cents into a pot of I guess on the flop it was 30 cents. Now it's 42 cents. So I haven't made any pair yet, so I don't necessarily have a great hand. But to see another card, I only need to risk another 5 cents to potentially win a pot of, well, now it's 50 cents. Before it was 40 cents. So that comes into a concept called pot odds and whether it's worth calling. Now, I think there's a chance I may have had the best hand, which is why I risked 5 cents to win a potential pot of 50 cents there. Even though it is very likely that he had some sort of pair, given how he bet there. But given that I only had to risk 5 cents to win 50 cents, I only had to be right there less than 10% of the time. So it was a worthwhile call there, because I think perhaps 1 out of 10 times he doesn't have any pair and my ace high might be good. So that's why I made the call there. And same calling there on the flop, I potentially had the best hand, or I could improve if a jack or an ace came on the turn or river to improve to the best hand, like have a higher pair than what he might have had. Now, I wouldn't get carried away with calling when you don't have anything there. The reason I was calling is because he's only betting a minimum bet of 5 cents into a pot of 30 cents and 40 cents and 50 cents, right? Had he been betting close to the pot size, say the pot on the flop was about 30 cents and he bet 30 cents, now I'd have to risk 30 cents to win 60 cents. So my odds aren't as enticing. So in that case, I might have folded because I didn't have anything, and I don't really want to risk 30 cents to win a pot of 60 cents when it's not very likely that I have the best hand, and the odds that an ace or jack come on the turn or the river aren't that great, right? Out of a deck of 52 cards, well, we have 5 cards exposed for my 2 cards and the 3 in the flop, and so out of the 52 cards, we know 5 of them. So there's 47 other cards to come, and if I'm looking for an ace or a jack, there's 3 other aces and 3 other jacks in the deck. So 6 out of the 47 cards left to come could potentially improve my hand, which is not very high, right? So if I'm only going to improve 6 out of 47 times, me risking 30 cents to win a pot of 60 cents it doesn't make mathematical sense. And now, if you're totally new to poker, that's going to take some thought and probably some more explanation and reading and thinking.